Oh, hello everyone and welcome. I am so delighted, honored, humbled, and excited to have Hannah Ruth. That's Hannah Ruth like tooth, but with an R.
Hello, Caleb. Thanks for having me.
Hannah's uh you are an imaginative creator. You are like a deeply invested community builder, and Um, you are an artist by every definition, and you are painting a beautiful picture that one I feel like I've been a person looking at the canvas you're painting and privileged to be on the canvas that you're painting as well and be part of the artwork that you've been making in your life. And why I'm so excited for this is just to share a little bit about, the work that you're doing and the way that you see the world and celebrating queer artists throughout this entire month, but also just to like talk through. Like I love our conversations and I love that just that we get to be in conversation here for a little while and just go to the spaces. So for
Hmm.
everyone who is new to you, is just clicking play on this and listening in, Hannah, can you give us a little like Hannah Ruth 101? Like how do you describe yourself?
Yeah. Thank you, Caleb. It's so fun to be here. I love our conversations too. So grateful for our friendship and all of the work that we've got to do together, are currently doing together. Um, yeah, my little tagline is that I make music and community for misfits. So yes, very interested in um, creating spaces of belonging,
Mhm.
both, you know, externally through like events and um, workshops or whatever community formats they have, and then also internally coming to more of a place of belonging within the self and the ways that we can use art to help facilitate that process.
And your art facilitates that process on many dimensions. And I'd love for you to just like run down things like Oasis, Grief
Mm.
Song, Hannah Ruth, the music, and your newest
Yeah.
like, highly sensitive gaze. Could you give us the quick sort of like just I want to kind of get a sense for the different dimensions that make up the fabric of the work you're doing.
Yeah, sure, cool. So Oasis is a fun place to start. Oasis House Show is a songwriter series that I host at my place in downtown Los Angeles. And yeah, it's kind of in the name, it's meant to be an oasis, kind of a counterbalance to um, the busyness and the stress and the feeling of needing to like perform the self that we often feel. I
Mhm.
feel like, especially in the Los Angeles, hustle and
Mhm.
grind art community, um, or I don't think community is quite the right word for that situation, but y'all know what I'm talking about. It's supposed to
Gotcha.
be a breath, kind of a breath outside of that, and just um, meeting together in a really intimate space that's about the songs and about really connecting with individuals through music. I think it's the most intimate way I've found that we can connect with each other, especially with strangers, which is kind of crazy. And we just open up space there for people to connect on kind of like a spiritual level. People come in strangers and leave. We always leave feeling kind of like we're in this bonded, magical little realm. And yeah, it's a good time.
It's similar to and different from Grief Songs.
Similar and different from Grief Songs. Grief Songs is held in the same context, but it's specifically a community healing event. So it's not focused on showcasing different artists. We bring in like about a dozen artists to each event who each share a song. And then we go on kind of a meditative journey together, just being with our own grief and experiencing that in a collective of people, all working with different types of grief, but kind of realizing experientially that we're all in it together. And my experience of grief songs has been it kind of like weaves a net under these darkest experiences of being alive, and is that tangible reflection of that we're not alone, which I think is like probably the hardest way to feel as a human. So yeah, it's been really beautiful and healing for me and for I think a lot of members of the community who've participated in it.
Not
Yeah.
surprising that many of the words you just used to describe both of those events-based, community gatherings, are often reflected in your body of work in the catalog of music. How do you describe
Mm.
your music and the mission you're on as a music artist, the world of Hannah Ruth music, Spotify, Apple Music, your catalog, that sort of space?
Yeah. I mean, so as a singer and songwriter, I developed the way I write very, very personally. I didn't share it with anyone for the first 10 years, 6 to 17 or whatever. And it was very much just being my own safe space to express my emotions and what I was going through, and didn't feel safe expressing to other people. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like I make music in a lot of different genres, but yeah, the common thread is that it's all about um, just connecting to the very raw emotion and evoking that in how I'm singing and writing.
Mm.
I'm just trying to be really true to the feeling and yeah, the storytelling.
And you have a new music project under the banner of Highly
Yes,
Sensitive Gaze.
highly sensitive gaze. Yes, very excited about that project. Yeah, it's the first band I've been a part of in a few years. Second band ever, and we bonded through um, a workshop that I host, well, kind of like a peer support group slash workshop called Inner Oasis, which is um, it's about practicing emotional vulnerability um, and really experiencing what that feels like and how that can change our relationships to ourselves and to our art and to performing and to just being in the world. So Mark and Riley and I, who are in the band, are all very like bonded on that common foundation, which is amazing. And it's very like folk style music, compositions to a lot of songs that I've written, and also we co-wrote a song with a Palestinian poet and human rights activist, and that's going to be our first record, which we're working on right now. Very, very excited to share that one. Yeah.
I am going to share Break Me Down Again to everyone who's
Mm,
listening about this. And
yeah.
while we're on the topic, will you just give, for the people who are gonna like watch this and then click into Bring Me Down Again, you described it, I wrote this down as the way you set this up in this video. I couldn't make it to the live show and I forever like performing that night as well. So like you said, true love is scary. Sometimes it destroys the ego. And you describe that as like that can be hard and beautiful at the same time. What's the story of Break Me Down Again?
The story. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an expression of that longing to like really um connect with someone. I wouldn't even beyond connecting like that like the romantic longing to like merge with another person, with like a lover. Um but how but in relationship with like the lived experience in relationships of how like terrifying and difficult it is to
Mhm.
go beyond all of like the barriers we've built up that prevent that from being able to happen, which I think are just yeah, so many different barriers. And but then there's also the experience of moving through those and the beauty that's there. And in my experience, it's like also with the grief work and with yeah, the experience of loving someone. Part of really going deeply into that experience is like acknowledging and feeling the reality that relationships end, um, in one way
Mhm.
or another.
Mhm.
And yeah, I feel like there's a way of holding that all together where like really letting yourself love someone is just going to break your heart open, like, period. That's what happens. But that there's like a really deep beauty and power in that experience. But I think also a lot of us avoid it because yeah, it's intense.
If I captured this right, you say, um, but I don't know if I can take it. I have one heart. You can break it. Break me down again.
That's special hearing you say the lyric. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing of like in that realization is I think also coming to terms with like our own death, which is also part of the story. And
Mhm.
like I think there's something in loving another person that's really about letting go of ourselves, like not just in a way of like, oh, I'm letting go of making myself look this way I think I should look, or hiding these things about myself I don't like, but a very tangibly like, to be fully here in the moment with you, I have to also be comfortable with the reality that this moment is right now and there's going to come a time when it's not.
Um, you're an individual that I look up to as a heartbeat of the queer community in Los Angeles and beyond. And you know, have created spaces for queer individuals of all different expressions and identities, you know, and individuals non-conforming, non-binary, individuals just sometimes starting out their journey, sometimes deep into it, lots of questions, lots of spaces of it. And there's a lot, that's a very wide space inside like the creator community of Los Angeles. And you're always engaged, you're always advocating for it. You become like a beacon, a lighthouse in that community, in that world. And here we are on the doorstep of Pride. Like when we're recording this, we're just about to hit Pride. And uh, I keep thinking about Pride and the way that we sort of say this I'm proud sort of celebration, but how that is a progression,
Mm-hmm.
and how in the queer experience, we don't start there. And the layers of work we do and the experiences and milestones we have on the journey so that we can walk a path to Pride, one that is ongoing, one that is alive right now.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe your path to Pride? What, you know, what milestones have you seen along the way, and where are you going on this path? What's next for you?
Yeah. Um, as I referenced before we started this call, this is, I love the way you're framing this. I haven't heard it framed like that before, and I think it's so true, and also just huge, just a huge topic to get into. Um, I think I think I'm gonna just start at the punchline because then I'll be more likely to end up there in our time frame. But I feel like, yeah, to me, the core of pride, what pride is about, which even I'm sure you'll relate to this. The word pride is an interesting one for me because I was raised in a evangelical religious tradition that views the word pride only through a negative lens, only as like pride as being like a sin, like a or one of the core sins of being a person, which there's so much to get into there. Um, but yeah, I think to me, the positive orientation to the word pride and the concept of pride in relationship to being queer is just comes back to like our our essential worthiness, like a felt experience and understanding and really deep rootedness in the fact that we're all worthy,
Mm.
essentially, as humans, all like worthy of love, worthy of connection, and worthy of like living our lives connected to ourselves and connected to our bodies, our experiences, um, the other people around us, the earth, like the reality of being who we are versus the converse of that, which is this really crazy construction of this world where there's this assumption that we're somehow like not worthy of existing
Mhm.
in it, and that's constructed on so many different levels. Um, yeah, and I think for me, I mean, the beginning of like my coming out story and relationship to pride as a queer person is very, it's a very like a defensive stance. Like when I first came out to my family and came out to all these people who I was raised with, who were all like evangelical Christian community, it becomes very self-isolating, that community, because you're supposed to view anybody on the outside as like sinful, going to hell, dangerous, gonna lead you astray. So my coming out, I came out very publicly. I wrote a blog post, and I shared it on my Facebook because I was very much in this place of like, okay, and I had my plan. I had the blog post written, and then I like called like my mom, my dad, and my grandma. Then I launched the blog post and like executed it. Um, because yeah, coming from this place of like, okay, this is my decision, and I know I'm just gonna face so much like opposition, um, different methods of trying to control me, whether that's through like yelling at me or trying to manipulate me more subtly into thinking I was doing something wrong. And so I was very much like on the defense of like, this is my strategy, this is what I'm doing. And then like, these are the people that I'm not going to engage with during this time while I'm transitioning into being with a woman, learning how to live my life in relationship to the world in a way that feels true to me versus based on this kind of system of beliefs that I don't agree with in my heart. Um, yeah, and that happened. What is it? 20. I don't know if I remember the year. Maybe how long ago? 10, maybe 11 years ago. And I feel like just now, like this year, I just turned 30. I'm starting to get to a point where I've done a lot of like trauma healing work and just work on developing my spiritual life and my sense of like self love and self worth kind of from the ground up, and getting to a place where I can start to feel the pain of that rejection
Mm.
just now.
Mhm.
Um, because, yeah, in my experience, it like
Mm.
I'd become so dissociated from that in order to protect myself and keep my heart intact and
Mm.
not put myself in a position where other people could manipulate my view of the world,
Mhm.
that yeah, there's just really strong like walls built up there, and I think it takes a lot of resourcing, that's like the trauma informed word, create like connecting with that like unconditional love and the deep knowledge of the self-worth to even open up the space where you can feel the pain of being rejected or of being pushed out of a community. Because I think when you've internalized, like as I had and have, that there's something wrong with you and that you're unworthy of connection, coming face to face with that being proven is like it's too intense. You have nothing to fall back on. It could just like wreck you to really feel that. um yeah, so I feel like I'm turning the corner on a different part of that process, which is where, I don't know, something about like when we become so rooted within ourselves and our own connection with our worthiness, there starts to open up more room at some point to interact with that which is kind of doing the harm or
Mm.
saying the opposite message, um, in a way that's still very connected to the core, which is that we're all worthy. But yeah, I'm definitely like in the process of that, and I don't know, it takes time.
Ah, yeah, it as if there's, all of those self-protecting things you put in place sort of have layers that you sort of buried underneath, and you're like an archaeologist sort of excavating out this space. Here you are years later, just finding this pain that you can actually feel, that you're equipped to like feel this time. To me, that's pride. Like I feel like, oh, there we are. Like what a milestone. And just to be intentional to check in with ourselves at this time of year to say, where are we on that path? What is the next healing step? And it's so beautiful.
Mm.
Uh, I'm I'm reminded as you're just sharing so openly and so tenderly about your story and your path. Like there is, a lot of people that are going to watch this are beautiful allies and advocates of a community that firsthand experience. How would you convey to someone who doesn't live the queer community how would you articulate what it is to be, a queer artist, to be a member of a queer community, to describe that queer culture and queer family, anything that you would offer there?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind for me right off the bat is like, I don't know, something that I've said before, and I think a way that I view queerness is like, I think everyone is queer at the core. Like, and by that I mean we all have things that are essential to ourselves that are in contradiction to the world that we live in and the messages that we're told about ourselves. And identifying as queer is just a reconnection to and an ownership of those things, and as saying, oh, I'm actually down with this. I'm actually like, can I swear on this interview?
Sure.
I actually like fuck with this part of myself. Like that's how I would phrase it. Um, so I think it's like, I think the reason being queer, I being in like the LGBTQ community, the reason it's so intense is because the message that we're being told is like the most beautiful thing about you, which is your experiences of love and connection with another human being, are actually wrong and ugly. It's
Mhm.
like that's what's so painful. But I think there are ways that we're all told that all the time. I think they're more subtle and we're often not in touch with that. But it's the thing that for you, something about you that's actually beautiful and tender and important to you. And you're being told by this society or this world that there's something wrong with that.
Mhm.
That's what queerness is. That's what the experience of queerness is. And not only is there something wrong with that, but we're going to use means of control and violence to destroy that part of you,
Mhm.
right? So I think anyone who is willing to sit with that can connect to that experience.
Hmm. In your last single, What's a Star, you do this thing where you sort of contrast like our personification of what it means, and especially as music artists, the idea of being a star is probably the most desired outcome, the goal, the quest. Like
Hmm.
we're all out to be stars, whatever that means. But you contrast that with a spark.
Mm. It's so sweet how well you know my lyrics.
Will you just like draw on why that distinction is so important to you, and the way you talk about spark is, I would say, so deeply tied to purpose and mission.
Mm.
Using that song as a way to do it, will you talk about what it means to be a spark?
Yeah, I think to me the contrast that I'm drawing is like a star is something that's like way out there and it's separate from me, it's far away, it kind of shines, you know, a light or a point that I can walk to, but like there's no way I'm ever going to get close to that or be able to interact with that in any meaningful way that's part of like me and who I am. Of course, people could talk about stars in different ways, but that's the image. And then versus a spark is like something that's up close and tangible and actually can be used in your life and something that you as an individual engage with and have power in relationship to and can create with and like um yeah, I think even the conception of like celebrity in our society is another way of trying to distance us from ourselves, like psychologically distancing us from the fact that we're all artists, we're all creators, um, we're all worthy of attention. Like these things that our society is constantly trying to tell us that we're not. And so that visualization is just kind of the setting out that as an artist, like my goal is to communicate with another person in a way that brings something to life within them, something that's meaningful in their relationship with their self and the way that they live their life. Like that's my goal. I don't ever want people looking at me and thinking like, wow, look at how that person encapsulates all these things that I could never be or that I'm not
Mhm.
worthy of. That's like the opposite of the point.
I could not find any better way to sum up you as an artist and the work that you do. It is beautiful, and you are the embodiment of a spark.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that spark with us on this little chat. And have a
Thank you,
beautiful
Caleb.
path to pride.
Love you. So proud of you.
Thank you so much for this. Okay, I'm gonna stop this recording. Don't go anywhere.